Victoria initializing. Victoria online. Analyzing Japanese Grand Prix. Analysis complete. Supercomputer 6-word synopsis. Wet. Delayed. Visibility. Excitement. Controversial. Champion. Now to hear what the bozos have to say. Loading music.
Hey now, welcome to the Dirty Side of the Track, America's leading Formula One podcast. I'm Brian, that's Rob. Today was the Japanese GP, although for those of us in the States, it was kind of like last night. Rob, that was chaos, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, but I'm going to be a little self-indulgent for a second. I'm sitting here, and you know how last week at Quali they had to pull Max's car over in case it had no fuel left, right?
Right.
I'm right now the version of what would happen if you let the car run to empty. I am 100% spent, and I'm going to be doing this pod on fumes. So yesterday I did the half marathon with my Dirty Side t-shirt on. I'm hoping we might have picked up a few new listeners. A few people sort of asked about the shirts we were running. It could have just been being... courtesy asking, but whatever. So that was great. But then I went to bed, did a power nap, tried to wake up for the race, woke up for the race to decide that it wasn't actually going to happen for another 2 hours, powered through that to stay awake to watch it, then watched the Packers, then watched the mighty Arsenal defeat Liverpool, and I got nothing left. I'm absolutely done. It feels like this weekend's gone on for a week.
First world problems with all those sports you were watching after running around.
I know.
By the way, you ran a half marathon and people were talking to each other?
Yeah, people do. It's not like you're Usain Bolt in it all the way around. You're just kind of like jogging, so you can have a conversation as you run.
Oh man, I run 2 miles out every morning, and I can't even think, let alone talk to other people. But,
no, that's what keeps your mind going. It was it was a good event, and there were some great signs that people were holding up on the side of the road. My personal favourite was a young girl that was holding up a sign, and all it said on it was "Insert motivational quote here."
I thought you were saying there were great signs like Carlos. But,
Right. Anyway, so yes. Oh my gosh. Whatever it was this morning, 2:30 a.m. Eastern, I'm honestly sitting there half awake, eyelids drooping, thinking, what are me and Brian going to talk about today? This is not going to happen. I've got Paul texting me from Japan going, I don't see this restarting. I'm like, yeah, you and me both. At this point, you've gone radio silent on text, so I'm pretty sure you've fallen asleep.
And on Twitter, I fell asleep. We were trading a lot of notes, and I was active on Twitter on the @F1 Dirty Side account, and we were bemoaning the tractor, which we'll get to, and we were talking about everything, and we were betting when it'd restart, and then I fell asleep in the chair.
So we'll come to that later, but it went full circle from what are we going to talk about to oh my gosh, how are we going to cover all of this? So let's not beat around the bush. Let's get into news and social so that we can get on to the Japanese Grand Prix review. So, okay, quickly hit one thing. We're not going to go down the tinfoil hat brigade route on this one, but the cost cap stuff got delayed. Oh my gosh, so many people up in arms about the cost cap and the punishment and the this, that, and the other. Do you know what? This might not age well, but I'm still going to stand by my opinion that as much of a genius that Nui is to find all of the pushing the boundary of the aerodynamic regulations to the limit, they're going to have equal geniuses that are doing all the accountancy and all this kind of stuff. I fully expect that pretty much all of the teams will be inside and one or two will be slightly over. The FIA will look at it and go, oh crap, that is a little bit of a loophole we left open, issue a minor slap on the wrist and we'll all move on. That's not what everybody wants to hear, because everybody wants to hear that Red Bull are the devil in disguise and they're going to be stripped of all their titles and races ever. But I don't see it happening, do you?
No, we talked about this. And even on our Discord server, I put the thought out there that at best, somebody might have a minor. And the minor will be an infraction of some kind, which changes absolutely nothing. So I guess I'd ask, the listeners, if you think there's more coming on Monday, please let us know what you think and what it might be, if that's okay with you.
Question?
So we can kind of get that put together. I don't think there's anything coming.
Yeah, and when we talk of punishments, because no one really knows what's coming punishment-wise, and let's just, dine out on this one more time. But, as we spoke
we've never brought up the fact that he was on. No, should we talk about it?
Well, let's just bring it up now then. So when we spoke to world champion Jacques Villeneuve, he gave us this little view on what his view of the punishments around the cost cap were or were not.
And we need some proper regulations on what the penalty is for going beyond the budget cap, because right now they can do a million things, but who knows what will actually be the penalty taken out of the box.
Right. I mean, everyone keeps saying all these different teams are getting close to their caps, and then different teams start arguing they need to raise the cap. But if you said it at the beginning of the year, and teams shouldn't be penalized for hitting it, the ones who can't hit it should be penalized. And like you said,
They know how much
what is the penalty?
Spend. It's as if they've decided from the start that they would go past it anyway and then argue.
Yeah, I don't.
But also because there's no clear penalty. It could be a financial penalty, then who cares?
Right.
It could be a few points, okay. But it could also be exclusion from the championship. But which one will it be? Who knows? It's hard to imagine. It's hard to imagine the decision of excluding a team if they've gone beyond 1 million, 10 million. How does it work? I think the best penalty would be if you overspend by 1 million, you have to give 1 million to every other team in the grid, and they're allowed to spend that million even if it goes beyond their cap and so on. So if the top teams all spent 10 millions more, they would be spending 100 millions more, and all the smaller teams would get all that money. Then okay, that would balance it out. That would be fun. That would be fair.
So there you had it from the man himself. In fact, international journalism picked up on that very episode and published the whole article about the cost cap. So we were way ahead of the game here, and we really don't expect anything to come out on Monday. They're going to give out 8 out of 10 certificates of compliance and probably 2 slaps on the wrist if we believe the rumor mill.
Also this week, something maybe a little more positive and exciting as opposed to waiting for punishments, we're looking at tracks that had fallen off the calendar, tracks of yesteryear. And Rob put a blog out, and it's out our www.dirtysideofthetrack.com blog. It is really good about old tracks. And Rob, I know you had a couple favorites. I kind of agree with you on them, but I'd love your thoughts there.
Yeah, I mean, first off, I couldn't believe how many individual tracks have hosted at least one GP. The number was, I think, was 76, and it's going to grow to 77 next year when Vegas goes on its new track.
Vegas, baby,
so
Vegas!
I was never going to write about all 76, so I decided to just pick, let's draw a line in the sand of who's hosted at least 10 races, and it turns out there's 14 tracks, and as I was going through them, a lot of them were before my time. I don't even remember races being there, so that I can't say that I missed them. But the 2 that were on there for me are Sepang and Hockenheim. Hockenheim with a little asterisk. Sepang, because obviously it was designed to be for these cars in the modern era, and it always gave amazing racing because it was a wide track with overtaking in mind when they designed it. Hockenheim's got the asterisk because I love Hockenheim, but I love Hockenheim, the bigger one, before they had to take the butcher knife to it and shorten it. So
I'd agree on Sepang. I mean, when we first started doing the pod, you had a virtual background, and one of them was a track, and I think it was Sepang, if I remember right. And I'm like, I mean, it's such an obvious, when you see it, you know it. I mean, that the way it kind of, the 2 straights and the hairpin and the way it comes, I'm like, oh, it's Sepang. So to me, I think that's the one that I would love to see on the calendar. And I thought it was a great blog. Everyone should check it out if they have not. Couple drivers news, silly season. Pierre, the official announcement to Alpine on a multi-year deal, putting him together with his one-time friend and now nemesis, if you read social media accordingly, Esteban Ocon. So that'll be interesting. They actually have fairly similar stats: 1 GP win, 3 podiums, and a handful of races overall, and a similar amount of points. So I'm kind of curious, and I love the way that the French team, Renault, now Alpine, has 2 French drivers, Esteban and Pierre. I'd like Haas to show the same kind of nationalism and hire some American drivers like me. Put me in, coach. You got an open seat.
You don't have the neck strength. We saw what happens when a book hits you in the head when you're wearing a helmet. So.
Well, K-Mag and BSAP has a certain ring to it. Put me in, coach. I'm ready to play today. And then filling the seat at AlphaTauri and partnering with Yuki is Nick de Vries. And I haven't seen anything saying it's beyond a single year deal, but I'm excited for Nick. He earned it in the drive he had before. He's earned it over his career. He is 3 years older than Max, which is an interesting stat, but it's going to be interesting to see how he does with Yuki at AlphaTauri and what it turns out to be. And I am sad, though, that #Pukey is no longer a thing at AlphaTauri.
And also sad that Ericsson's prediction has just fallen at the last.
And I still think he deserves huge credit.
Oh, so, he does.
Lee on our Discord, I love you, Lee. You were acting like one wrong is like a fail. I think he's still Nostradamus in my mind, but that's okay.
What I did like as well, because I didn't realize this, was the picture that Alpine put up, or maybe it was one of the two drivers put up on their own Instas, which was those two as kids growing up in Normandy. I mean, what are the chances of two kids from relatively same kind of area that knew each other as young lads getting into the sport, and here they are together in F1, which, by the way, two of them from the same sort of area making F1 has got to have the odds stacked against it, to then be driving for the same team, and it's French.
Yeah. I mean, the car will be made out of baguettes. The question I have is, I don't know if you know this, and the listenership may not know all of the dirties. I actually grew up Scandinavian, and I grew up right near Kevin Magnuson. So again, K-Mag and BSAP, boom, rolls. Maybe not. Okay. There were a lot of great videos this week that, unfortunately, I spent a lot of time watching, unfortunately, because I'm going to talk about some of them. But some of them were great, some of them not so much. So first off, my YouTube algorithm somehow skewed very much to the AlphaTauri Red Bull side. I don't understand what happened. I will get it back down the middle again, but F1 drivers race down the world's busiest street on the Red Bull channel. This is a good one. Check it out. Red Bull versus AlphaTauri in Tokyo. They had places to go, things to do. It was fun to watch. And then there was a physical challenge, soccer and basketball. And it's great to watch F1 drivers who are so talented try to do something with a ball that are not good at it. Nico had a great preview of Suzuka, but he also answered questions. And he's been doing that more so recently. The question was posed to Nico Rosberg, and Rob, I'd love your thoughts on this. Biggest improvement coming next year in 2023, team-wise. He thought Mercedes and McLaren. And I thought about it a little bit, and I'm like, that kind of makes sense, right? You would expect more from those teams than this year. Is there a natural rebound? I mean, would you disagree with Mercedes and McLaren as an answer, or would you put anyone else in there at this point?
What I don't really understand is how much the designs they've already had to come up with and have got locked in are locked in for the next few years, and under the budget cap, what can they really change to close the gap? So if you were picking teams that you thought would close the gap, it's probably those two. I'd love to think that Ferrari can close the gap just by hiring new strategists. Nothing to do with the car, just let's just get them, closing that gap down, because we'll come to it later. The gap, the physical gap, especially today, was on display between their two lead drivers, and it was insane. So,
and totally insane. McLaren had a video out. Lando and Daniel Ricciardo play Mario Kart. You got to check this out. It's kind of painful and we've all been there at some point in our lives, when you're not the gamer or someone in the room is not the gamer and they're trying to learn the game real time. What are the buttons? How do I do this? You got to watch it. I feel bad for Danny Rick, but it was fun. Checo did a virtual lap in the Red Bull channel again, and basically it's quiet and you just hear him clicking the paddles. Skip it. And then AlphaTauri had Yuki taste testing sushi, and Pierre was serving it to him, and it was great. Like, honestly, check it out. First of all, he only got one wrong. And again, I thought this was epic, but Pierre gave him a hard time for getting one wrong. So maybe Pierre and Lee are related in their grading curve. But I thought it was fun, and Alex came by and was messing with Yuki, and Danny Rick came by and was messing with Yuki. Oh, it was just a lot of fun. And then I'll close on one last one that was really good. Fernando Alonso reflects on a record-breaking 350 races is the title, and it was from you taped at Singapore. It's on the Formula One channel. Came out early this last week. You should definitely go and watch it. It was great. The memories he shares and then the videos that accompany it, really fantastic. And I apologize again for the ones that I missed. I heard K-Mag and Mick had some tower building thing. I missed it, but I will keep my eye out for next time.
Well, and one that you did drop out, I know, because I don't watch as much as you do, but the one that I really like, because I just look out for his channel all the time now, is Lollipop Man.
Yeah, and I think I tweeted that. It was so good.
It was the Verstappen one where they kind of said, "Hey, did you have a good race?" He's like, "Where'd you finish?" Like, 7th. Where'd you start? 7th. Oh, okay, boring race then. And then it shows it from Max's view, and the guys are just geniuses. They really are.
Well, actually, in the other part, they did a Max side and a George side. And I love the bad impression of George. And I love doing my own bad impression of the bad impression of George. I walk around my house now doing a Lollipop Man impression of George. Nicely done, nicely done. And that's, my family has no idea what I'm doing. But do they ever?
Oh my gosh.
No.
Oh, right. Then we arrive at race week. And this, I've got to be honest, pretty much all of practice and quali was done after the fact for me. It was all done in catch-up mode, watching extended highlights, or I rewatched all of quali, but I didn't watch any of it live. Did you, Brian?
I watched all of quali. On tape. Yeah, I did not see any of it live.
Yeah, and that's just one of the things. I knew I was going to put the effort in to get up for the race itself, but was never going to do that like 3 days straight for for all of that. So, I mean, it's in hindsight, it's a great thing now. So you've got practice. We had the wet conditions that were coming through, which was going to foreshadow what happened last night. The main thing from practice that was just fantastic was when Latifi,
the greatest.
When he takes the wrong turn. He takes the wrong turn and then tries to blame the car. Hey, I don't know what happened there, guys. Something strange happened with the car.
Something strange with the car.
Nothing strange happened with the car. You just turned the wheel too early and you took the wrong road. And the memes, the internet is such a brilliant... It can be a toxic place, but when things like this happen... It was genius.
The Top Gear memes, this is what happens when you turn off the green racing line memes.
Oh, yeah.
There were so many. And every time I watched the rest of the race then, and I'd see that corner, I was waiting for someone to pull in there and pull a Latifi. I'm like, how do you take a wrong turn? And how does he do it there? It's Suzuka as opposed to Paul Ricard. Paul Ricard, I would actually understand. It's a bunch of like made up, lines amongst other lines. I don't even know where they're supposed to go watching it. He nailed that. But at Suzuka, he just took a turn into a dead end.
And the one that we jumped on the back of, because it was guest of the show, Rob Reed, that was on a few weeks ago, was saying this is all the whole planes, trains and automobiles, you're going the wrong way. So I think we jumped on that and put a tweet out on that account. But I mean, you just felt sorry for him because of all the people it happened to. It had to be Latifi, right? So and nothing else really caught my eye in practice, if I'm honest.
Yeah, nothing else for me. We're going to have something good to say about Latifi at the end, so stick around. Because that's important. No, I didn't have anything else in practice-wise. And then quali, I'm watching quali, and I'm incredibly nervous as they start because Charles's car is on jacks. The clock is starting, 18 minutes, 17 minutes, and it's up in the air. And then they say it's going to be ready soon, so you should get in now. And I'm thinking, is that safe for the people under the car to have him climbing around on top of it? How sturdy are these jacks? And the whole thing, anyway. And then I remembered as they're talking about Q1, Nicky Latifi had a 5-place grid penalty, which felt, and I hate to say this, like the most redundant thing to ever be given to somebody. You can't start beyond 20th, and you knew he was going to be 20th, but okay. And then I got really confused, and Rob, I don't know if you have any insights on this, but the AlphaTauri team as a whole had massive brake problems in Q1. Just massive. They're both complaining. Yuki's complaining. Pierre's locking up and complaining. How does a team have brake problems in quali? Did they not? Did they change something right after practice? I heard. I don't know.
I didn't get it either because you've only got, a couple of hours since FP3 was over, and nobody was seeming to be moaning about it in there. It's like it just suddenly, where did this come from? I'm like, okay. But, I mean, we saw Gasly was out, and obviously something was screwed there. But, I mean, did someone accidentally press some brake reset button that they shouldn't have between FP3 and quali? I agree with you. It was just bizarre.
It was bizarre. We lost Albon, as you said, Gasly, K-Mag, Stroll, and Latifi. Seb made it into Q2. Seb was an underlying topic of conversation. That was exciting.
And also, and this drives me mad. I'm gonna go on Rob's rant here. Vale's Tales is for the nice stuff. Rob's rant is when I get angry, right? So, Mick out-qualified K-Mag again. I don't think he's leading in the head-to-head, but he has out-qualified him more times than people would like to give him credibility for. And yet, it's still this whole, he's the world's worst driver. And it's like, everyone's almost saying that Haas seat is open because he's basically in the same bracket as Latifi.
I don't get that.
I don't understand.
I don't understand why he doesn't have that seat for next year.
I don't either.
Did he out-negotiate himself out of a chair?
I really have no idea. And was he flirting with other teams and it's come back to bite him? And are Haas just making him hold on until the last minute? Because the only other rumour out there that me and you've talked about, Brian, is Hülkenberg, which is pointless. What's the point of bringing him in?
I would hope they would not bring Hülkenberg in, personally. I mean, it doesn't help anything. There's no way you would want to have... Because he's not going to develop the car for the long term. I mean, it doesn't add up, doesn't make sense. Oh, man. Let's move to Q2. So Crofty had a stat that I had not heard. Max and Carlos were the only two to reach Q3 in every race all year. That's a great stat.
Yeah, I wouldn't have. I wouldn't have guessed that they were the only two. For some reason, it feels like there's more drivers that have done that. But
right?
Yeah. Okay.
That was an interesting one. So Crofty, thank you for that. And then we saw Alonso pop up at the top to get started, and then he dropped a bit. And then we had one of my favorite moments, which kind of went quickly by. But Checo and Russell were separated by 0.001, so a thousandth of a second. But Perez, sorry, I got that wrong. Alonso was ahead of Perez and Russell by 0.001, but Perez and Russell had the same time. This is from the Jack Villeneuve, Jerez decider in '97, where he had the same quality time as Schumacher and his teammate. But Perez did it first, so he was on the board first. The exact same time. What? I love it.
Oh man, I knew you'd love that. I knew you'd love that too much. But and that Alpine was starting to look like really quick.
They're back,
and they're back
after the double DNF. They're back.
Yeah, exactly. So Fernando throws it into second, and we lose Danny Rick, Valtteri, Yuki, Sho, and Mick. And then we go into Q3, and the big bit of Q3 that got all the tongues wagging, which I'm glad nothing came of it, because I don't think it was on purpose, was when Max basically looked like he tried to light his tyres up maybe, or get some temperature going, or just whatever, as Lando's flying down the outside of him. The car just twitches massively to the left. Lando's, well, we'll try and keep this clean, but Lando's buttocks must have tensed very much at this point, as he basically on I-30R takes to the grass and then cuts back in again. They looked at it, they saw the telemetry. And people are going, I can't believe Max tried to take Lando out. No, he didn't. What's he possibly got to gain from that? He's going for the World Championship.
Which he may have gotten.
And then it's going to go through his head that, I know what a really good idea would. Why don't I put my own body in harm's way by throwing myself in front of a car that's doing like 3 times as fast as it did? There is zero credibility to the idea that you would have done anything on purpose there. It made no sense.
Max and Lando have also become friends, it appears. At least on social media. They're at the club together. They're flying around together. They're hanging out together more so than ever before. And then Max actually, if you saw later, briefly they showed the clip, he put his hand up, waved, kind of apologized, like, my bad.
Yeah.
He obviously couldn't say that was all on me at the end because he was, can't take a penalty, so you have to play the team game. But I mean, Lando was going wicked fast on a non-push lap, right? He's just out there getting around to start. He's going wicked fast, and Max is going incredibly slow, and then lost it. It was just Max probably shouldn't have been doing that in the middle of 130R, but still, I think it's a pretty even deal. And I'm happy nothing came of it.
Yeah, and then we essentially got the grid then. Max went and threw in a great lap. We got rounding out, we had Charles, Carlos, Checo, Esteban, Lewis, Fernando. And it was just close, and it was exciting. It was not one of those qualies where it was kind of all done and dusted on the first run, and then they all kind of relax and see if they can improve on the second. I really enjoyed this quali. What about you, Brian?
Me too. I loved it. The on-track racing this weekend was, I thought, fantastic. This is another reason why I love Suzuka. We're going to talk about the rain here. Let's get to the race. We're going to talk about the rain here and all of the different things that happened. But I thought when the race was going, I thought it was brilliant. And when the quali was going, I thought it was brilliant. So obviously, as everyone knows, the race started here. Central Time in America was midnight. 1 for Rob. We were both up. We were at this point talking about it. And it was disappointing to see the way that I thought the whole thing started. To get the cars out there, to actually have a start made sense. I didn't get the length of the red flag after that. We'll get to that in a second, but let's talk about the start.
Actually, let's even go one step back than that, right?
Yeah.
They always say, and I think the commentary team said it as well, that Inters is more for that greasy, wet conditions just as it starts to dry out, maybe like what we waited around forever last
Singapore.
week for it to dry out for Inters, right?
Well, actually, they dried out for slicks, but it's the same idea.
Yeah. So this time they decide to make the call to start it in the wet conditions. I'm thinking, okay, great, they're actually listening and they've heard this whole thing that if you go round on the wets, that's the best thing to clear all the water off the track. And then suddenly you realise that the whole grid is lit up in green. You're like, this can't pan out well. There's so much standing water. There's so much rain coming down. Why have they mandated? And maybe this is the rules. Maybe if it's a standing start, you have to let the teams decide. And if it's behind the safety car, they can mandate that it's full wets, right? But what probably should have been a sea of blue was a sea of green. So we get going. And right from the get-go, everything's as twitchy as hell. I mean...
Yeah, that was the craziest first lap. Max got a decent start. But Charles got an even better start and had him on the inside. But Max, oh man, I don't know how he outbraked him going into that corner in the rain on Inters. I mean, that man is talented. He went around the outside. Now Jensen kept saying there was runoff, he had less risk. Okay, but he still did it. I thought it was amazing.
And let's just do this sequentially, right? So I was going to start talking about everyone else's starts, but we didn't really get to see anybody else's starts until the whole thing was red flagged and we were just watching never-ending repeat of onboards. So let's go with this. Let's go chronologically, right? So you kind of get this getaway. It was surprising to see that pretty much everybody got away clean. We had Vettel
we
spin
saw him
around,
in the
and
background spinning.
And at this point we didn't know why. We just saw him kind of spinning, and they went, "Oh, Vettel's off," and I was thinking, "Oh, please don't be out because you love this track and it's your last time here. Please don't be out." And we heard that he was going again. The yellow flag, I think, disappeared, and okay, great, cool. And every time they showed an onboard shot, I was just going, I got nothing. I've just got white out here. How the hell are these guys seeing anything? And I know they say the visibility in the car is a little bit better than the cameras, but...
I mean, there was nothing. You could see zero. And when Carlos then went off, we didn't even know it was Carlos at first. And we didn't know how he went off. We just heard a Ferrari in the barrier. That hydroplaning was intense, what happened to Carlos. And the speed with which he went off, the way he bounced out, the number of cars that went by him a millimeter in front of him who I don't think saw him. A Dirty Sider, Mike Holubowski on Twitter, sent us a video right away from a different angle from the stands, which you could see more of it. It was even more dangerous seeing the other angle because you could actually see Carlos bouncing onto the track and cars going by. It was wild. The advertising came off the barriers. Pierre's driving around with a billboard on front of his car.
And that was the bizarre thing. So, and you didn't really see anything. There's a Ferrari in the barrier. You know someone's out. Then they work out it's Carlo, and then all of a sudden, kind of like gorillas in the mist, this car appears out of the fog, and it's like Gasly with an extra piece on it. I'm like, has he picked up someone's wing? Is that Carlo's front wing has come off and lodged on it? I'm like, that doesn't look any bit of a car I recognise. But it was such poor quality, visually wise, you couldn't work out what the heck he was towing around with him.
He had a massive Rolex barrier on the front of his car.
Which we'll come back later.
Yes, we will. And then at the same time, though, then Albon goes out. And I'm like, oh my God, did he collect Alex? Did they hit each other? No, he just had a gearbox problem at the exact same place, but to the right side of the track. What are the odds of that happening?
Oh, I know. So then we get the kind of everything's going off, and it's kind of like it's early hours of the morning. My brain can't compute this amount of excitement when I've got out of bed at 1 a.m. And then the safety car comes out. It's like, okay, we can breathe for a little bit.
Right.
Safety car, and then red flag pretty soon after. And then we sat.
Well, but we saw, then we got to see things. We saw Vettel bounce off Alonso.
I was going to say, that's when we kind of just sat and we were like, well, what are we going to do now? We watched them all come into the pit lane. They take their positions at the end of the pit lane. And this is then the moment where we get to actually learn what the hell went on in that lap and a half.
You couldn't see any of this. And then they finally show the onboards. You saw Vettel bouncing off Alonso. I don't think either of them knew the other guy was there. And Vettel did turn in on him.
Oh my gosh. How close was he to that white line? Well, he was on the white line. I mean, when he's going down the outside on the left-hand side, and both Aston Martins did this, but Vettel went down the left-hand side and got away with it for a while and then collected Alonso. Stroll
was amazing.
Oh my gosh, that was, on Mario Kart when you can time the start correctly and get that turbo boost start down.
Except in order to make it work, he had to go down the far right along the wall where it's a little drier, and he just passed like a million people. I'm watching that onboard. I'm like, oh my God, Lance Stroll, good on you, sir. And then we saw Zhou spinning around a little bit. It was just carnage. And again, now well, you can talk about the Rolex board, but they're sitting there looking at it. And at this point, one of the lowlights for me of the entire race and probably of the entire season happened. And there are two parts to it for me. Number one is what actually happened. A tractor on the track to reclaim Carlos's car. What had happened was Pierre had pitted to get the Rolex board off his car, went back out, is in you can't see anything. He's following behind, trying to catch up to the safety car because it's still safety car. He's trying to get caught up to the pack. And he passes a tractor on the track at a very high rate of speed. It wasn't quite full chat, but it was, and he couldn't see it till the last second. And people are saying, oh, it was a red flag. His dashboard went red like a millisecond before he passed the tractor. So no, that's not an argument. The fact that he pitted, if the FIA can't see where the cars are on the track and know not to put a tractor out there, I don't care if it's safety car or not. You can't see anything. They could see nothing. And I think we all know, we have a lot of new listeners. I'll just say in 2014, I didn't want to get into it on Twitter exactly what happened in 2014. A driver passed away at this track with that situation. And it was a countryman of Pierre's and someone he knew. And now I know why he was so hot. I didn't know about the tractor when they show him getting out of the car. And I don't understand how this could happen.
I don't either, because we've got this live telemetry. They know where every car is within a fraction of a millisecond of each other, right? So even if the vast majority of the pack had gone past with the safety car, great. But you still knew that one hadn't. You still knew that one is busting a gut to try to catch up. And he was...
And they can't see.
And they can't see because of the spray, right? So, and then it all started coming out more and more and more, and it was really exploding on Twitter, and all the videos were coming out, and this truck hasn't even got bright lights, so you can't even see the thing. It's got like the world's worst lights that wouldn't illuminate like anything. And then this is where the second part of this happened for me, which was actually the worst part, which is they rolled out on TV. What was it? It was Karun and...
Well, at one point, Johnny Herbert was also.
Well, he comes in later.
Side.
Let's cover this because there's four of them, but two of them come out to start. I think it was Paul di Resta and Karun Chandok, right? Yep. And they come out and set about, and they looked uncomfortable while they were talking before they even got to the meat of what they're going to talk. So I don't know if they've got people in their ear saying, "You've got to paint this as being Gasly's fault," because that's what they proceeded to do for the next 30 seconds. Do a forensic analysis of what the hell is Gasly driving so fast for? What an idiot. And then Twitter just snowballed even more. There's this tidal wave of abuse to Sky Sports going, what the actual F are you suggesting here? Even if, and I think he did take a reprimand for going a little bit too fast, but in a prior corner ahead of the tractor area. And they were trying to say, oh, well, but he collected that Rolex board at the scene of the accident. He knows a safety car is down. He therefore knows the accident is in that spot. So he should know they're going to be recovering the car, so he should slow down. Everything you're saying might have some kind of technical, logical aspect to it, but there's zero visibility and you put a frigging tractor in the way of a car going 150 miles an hour.
Yeah, that was when I said the second to two things, right? The first thing is actually what happened, which was a big problem. But you're right. The second part, and that's why I love the dirty side and the dirty siders. We love racing. We love watching cars, whether we're lifelong fans or have been watching it for 5 days. It's a passion it's an enjoyment. And for me, it's also an escape at times from real life, just to watch something fun. We don't really do clickbait. We're not into headlines that try to bemoan things. I'm going to make an exception here. The people who tried to put this on Pierre, I thought that was horrible. I thought that was disgusting in my mind. A guy just barely escaped a massive crash, and you're putting it on him when he didn't put the tractor out there. He was within the rules. He was doing what any driver would have done. Any driver. And there are other drivers who passed the same friggin' tractor, just not as fast and not as bad as Pierre's. So to me, the FIA screwed this up so badly. And to do it at Suzuka. I know. I don't the parallels are eerie, and I'm happy no one got hurt. Something has to happen because of this, whether it's a new rule that says until all cars are past a spot and they can see, and you wait on the tractor longer. I don't care. I'd rather have more laps under safety car than have a dude whiz by a tractor.
They tried to draw the parallel to Monza when the tractor was out recovering the car. And there's two big differences here for me. One, beautiful blue sky. Everybody had perfect visibility at Monza. Two, I haven't fully fact-checked this, so I'm just going off my own memory, but they'd all caught the safety car.
Correct.
So the safety car just led them and tiptoed them around the marshals and the recovery vehicle, right?
Speed was regulated by the safety car.
Exactly.
They were bunched up behind it. They all knew it was there. I think Zhou Guanyu or someone, maybe it was Valtteri, I thought it was an Alpha, I can't remember, got a little bit outside of the driving line, close to the tractor, and everyone freaked out. But you could see they weren't going that fast. This was totally different.
Yeah, no, 100%. So and then all the drivers, obviously, because they're back in the pit lane with nothing to do because it's red flag, they're all kind of coming out on social media and, lots of people, Lando, Lewis, lots of them came out and said this is unacceptable. Christian Horner said it was unacceptable. Any team principal that basically took the microphone all condemned what was happening, apart from the Sky Sports journalists, and they went around and had a second go at it. And if there was ever a definition of digging a hole deeper for yourselves, so this time, obviously, Karun and Paul di Resta felt like they needed some wingmen, and they brought in, Johnny Herbert and the guy who I always forget, the main anchor that is just
Lazenby?
Faceless for me.
Simon Lazenby?
Is that his name?
I don't know.
I've never known the guy's name.
I thought that was a
right?
Bond guy or something. I don't know. I'm not British. Yeah.
So other dude in those three. And they tried to backtrack on it all. Well, if it came across in the previous segment that we're laying it all at Gasly's door. Oh, my gosh. This is how tired I am. I can't speak. If it comes across that we're laying the blame at Gasly's door, we're not. We're just saying that Gasly has a part to play in this, and of course the FIA should blame. And it just felt like the world's worst, like when you tell your kid to go and say sorry to someone they've just their sibling, and they go and say sorry, but they don't mean it.
Yeah, that was bad. All right, let's move on.
Let's move on.
We beat that. So talk about your favorite little Ted part, and then we're
So my favorite part
race.
where they're blatantly trying to kind of give you new content while the rain is still falling, and they're trying to hope, oh look, it's bright over there, we're going to be racing in a minute.
Which is around the time I fell asleep.
Which is about the time you fell asleep. They had Ted go into the garage where the Rolex board was that had been attached to Gasly's car, and it was so funny because he was obviously that like. He wanted to be the naughty little schoolboy that was going to do the prank. He's like, I got my Sharpie on me. Shall I sign this by Pierre Gasly so that it's worth a lot more? And they were like, yeah, go and do it. And he's like, oh, no. And then after committing this on live TV, I'm going to do it. Oh, I'm not. And he puts the Sharpie back. And then he goes back again for a second. Oh, maybe I could, Go on then, do it. I'm going to put my pen away. Just completely wimped out.
Yeah,
and then we got we're going to start. And they all got back in the cars and they all got ready to go and we were all ready to watch. And then they didn't. And they delayed it again. And I think this is when you fell asleep.
But here's what I knew before and I watched, obviously, the rest of the race early this morning, and we'll talk about it. But here's what I did know, is before the race started, obviously it was raining, and they cut to a great shot of Crofty and his homework. And they showed him in his commentary box, and they showed, all of the pieces of paper he had on the wall, and they showed the screens he had up, and they explained what'll happen and how the points will be allocated if they can't finish the race. And they hit this again during the rain delay. And they said, well, we get, up to 25% points and 50% and so on, and the number of laps, 27 laps, 28 laps is 50%, and then you get this 50% points, and then 3/4 points, and yada, yada, yada. And so at this point, the wine and Fritos, which by the way is a great mix. I'm just saying, like, people give me grief. I mean, you don't have to be the classiest person in the world all the time. Sometimes it's after midnight, you gotta let it all hang out. And so I fell asleep. And I started again this morning, and I'm watching the race, but I had some inklings something funny was going to happen at the end. And I know we'll get there, but I had a lot of texts.
Just because you got to fast forward to the end, let's go.
So
with this one.
we eventually restarted.
So we eventually restarted, and it was full wets at this point. And which was what all the team principals were saying. Let's just follow the safety car around with full wets. The drivers will know instantly if this isn't doable. So they go around, they're following the safety car, and pretty much every driver is saying, yeah, this is good for go. The name escapes me now. Somebody kind of threw a spanner in there and went, yeah, this isn't good enough yet. But it was kind of like
Valtteri, I think you said.
Was it Valtteri?
Yeah, I think so.
So really quickly, which super surprised me, the safety car ended, and they were like, he's coming in. Well, really? Yeah, the lights. And they even caught the commentary team by surprise. I'm like, well, there's a bit of a weird message coming through that says safety car scheduled to end, but the lights have gone off on the car. I think that means this lap. And yep, in he came, and off we went. And what proceeded to unfold then? I mean, we got what on the clock at the top, 49 minutes, I think it was.
I think it was less. I thought it was like 40 or something like that.
Maybe it was.
Short.
It was late or early, whichever way you want to look at it, and it just turned into let's split the difference. Let's say 45. 45 minutes of just pure enjoyment.
It was so great.
Just fantastic. So
it was so great.
So first off, everyone goes. Everyone's feeling out the grip. Everyone's going for it. And then it just turned into, do you know what? I think this could be Inter's. And we just had pit lane frenzy. Everybody, I think it was Vettel that might have sparked it. Vettel went in first.
Latifi and Vettel. Latifi and Vettel came in early. And I loved this. I have a very serious question. When in the world did we decide it was okay for cars to leave the pit lane side by side? Because I've not seen that before, and it happened twice in this race, where it was an unsafe release, neither guy gave up, and they came out side by side. And it happened with Seb and Latifi. They both came out side by side on Inter's first. And I'm like, how is that okay?
Yeah, I think there are 2 lanes in the pit lane, so I'm not sure on this one because...
And even exiting the pit lane?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure.
I don't think so.
I mean, neither of them had to brake, which was the big gimme, so...
Yeah, but it's just because it's a wider pit lane in Suzuka,
yeah,
we're going to let them go
Maybe
two
it is.
abreast?
Maybe somebody from the dirty side can... one of the listeners can tell us on this, because nobody got that excited about it. No, there was no kind of even investigation, so it was kind of like, yep,
and it happened
fine.
twice. It happened again. But anyway, you're right. Then, like you said, with 35 minutes left, the pit activity was just nuts. Everybody comes in. Alonso stayed out, got out, and he was in first place, still on the wets. Danny Rick still on the wets in second. Mick still on the wets on third. Everyone else had pitted. And then quickly Danny came in, and then quickly Fernando. But I loved the strategy by Haas. I thought it was good. A shot. You didn't like it?
Yeah. Well, okay. Hindsight's a wonderful thing. They rolled the dice. They did, didn't they? They split the cars, and they were like, well, one of you's going to go on to Inter's, and one's just going to hang out and hope for another safety car. So whether they flipped a coin, however they decided which one's which. Other teams double stacked. George got annoyed thinking that he'd lost time behind Lewis, and they were like,
Nicely done.
If you'd done one more lap on the wets, you'd have lost way more time than sitting behind Lewis for I mean, I saw it. I saw George arriving, and Lewis was already being dropped down onto his new tyres and away he was going. So he sat behind Lewis for what? Second and a half, maybe?
At most. Last time George double stacked with Mercedes, it was in Bahrain. He had to come in 3 times because of the wrong tyres, but that's okay.
So yeah, they left Mick out on the wets, gambling there'd be another safety car, and they would have really made out if that had happened, right?
I mean, he finished 17th. You know, what did they have to lose? If there'd been a safety car, that would have been
the only problem
brilliant.
Is that he had built his way up with the way things had gone. He was in the points, and if he'd have just followed suit, there was a real shot at points. But they just decided to roll the dice on stupid points. That's what I think they did. They were like, well, yeah, if we stay where we are and we follow everyone else, we're probably in a 3 or 4 way shootout for that kind of 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th. And they just decided, okay, we'll throw K-Mag into that fight. Mick will just hang out there because if we do get another safety car, like we could be looking at like a win or something stupid. Well, not a win, but you know what I mean. Some stupid number of points, right? And it just didn't play out. But what
Rob
we did
Bale,
get,
everybody, Mick Schumacher's biggest defender. Give him a round of applause.
It wouldn't matter which way around you'd done it. If they'd let K-Mag out, they just decided to roll the dice on one of the cars.
Yeah,
and if it had worked, everybody would have gone.
It was worth a shot.
Oh yeah, and it's worth a shot. It's worth a shot until you get hindsight and go, yeah, it wasn't worth a shot. Because as soon as the safety car didn't happen, he just fell like a stone all the way down.
They did stick with it for a long time, though. I will say
well,
that. Fernando pitted, Danny pitted. Those guys pitted.
You had to be all in on it because there were so few minutes left on the racing that once you decided to stick to that, you had to see it through. And we did therefore get, somebody can look the stats up, but I imagine it's going to go down as the shortest ever leading of a race in F1 history. But when the other 2 pitted and Mick took the line, he was first place for about the amount of time it takes you to blink before Max gobbled him up and went past him.
I didn't even see it.
Did you not see that?
I think I sneezed.
If you did, you could have sneezed or put your hand in for another handful of Fritos. And Mick led a Grand Prix for about
I don't eat Fritos for breakfast, brother. And so...
yeah, you were. You were on last night's food at that point.
Actually, the food was still out because I'd fallen asleep.
You sat in your chair with last night's drool coming down your chin. And,
that was this morning's drool. And then the best part was this at this point. So now people have pitted. And as Rob said, strategy is kind of playing out a little bit. But they showed Kevin Magnuson. He passed Lance on the inside of a corner where no one's done that before. He passed Valtteri, aggressive, and then everybody's like, oh, I can do that. And the overtakes and the attempted overtakes and the close following started at this point. And for me, it's like 30, 35 minutes of just amazing driving. And you needed to pit early for the inters. And at this point, I'm watching this as people are coming off the wets onto the inters and following closely, passing each other. And it just hit me. These are the best drivers in the world. Don't ever forget it. I recognize IndyCar is talented. I know NASCAR is talented. I'm not talking down on another racing league. But to do this with the spray, following in the spray, the onboards were useless, right? They had to use side cameras, and on the straights, you couldn't see squadouche. It was just too much spray. And Rob, you added the one question to our 100 seconds of DRS. What would be a great Bond gadget to add to a car? They did. It was smokescreen, because you couldn't see anything following. And these guys were the talent to do the overtakes, to not lose control of the car. I was like floored. I thought this was an epic section of racing.
It was amazing. What was also really, really interesting, especially for me that isn't that interested in tyres, was the people that then went early. Those inters started burning through pretty quick, and suddenly people like Vettel that had made hay while the sun was shining as everyone else was late to go on to inters was suddenly losing time, and all the new inters were phenomenally quicker. So you had this amazing blend of like, is anyone going to gamble coming in again? Can they do it? How much is the delta if you come in and go back out again? And we just had some insane passing, and then it kind of settled for a bit into two main patterns, which was Hamilton on Ocon. That was just phenomenal. How
so
close
good.
Hamilton could follow him for so long and kept trying. He just didn't have the straight line speed on 130R. And every time he looked like he got a good exit out of the hairpin, but it wasn't quite enough. And I mean, kudos to Ocon as well.
Huge kudos. Esteban.
Huge. That was amazing.
Amazing.
Two. But at the same time that was developing, and I thought that was all we were going to really be watching until the end of the race. Suddenly you're looking at the differential, and Charles' tyres have just packed up and gone home and have already gotten their flight for Austin, because he's so far behind Max, and that actually stopped being the story. It wasn't how far he was behind Max, it was what rate Checo is catching Charles.
Yes.
It's like, oh my gosh, this is not going to work out. and suddenly you saw again, we've heard it many, many times down the years. It's one thing catching the car in front, it's another thing getting past them. So Checo just reeled him in, got to within that 0.5, kind of the same distance Hamilton is behind Ocon, and just couldn't make it stick. Just could not, even in that Red Bull, could not get past Charles, despite the fact it looked like Charles's tyres were dying. Actually, I've just missed something, because this is my favourite team radio. Just before Perez caught Charles, Perez came on the radio and said to his teammates, to his team radio, he's like, "Hey, are you guys still there?" Because I think he was worried. Are you sleeping? I think he was worried his radio wasn't working. They went, "No, you're just in the groove, mate. Keep it going."
I thought it was, so as you said, I just want to recap something, because in Singapore we watched we watched Checo, and we watched Charles kind of pulling away at times. And then we had the same kind of deal the race before with Max doing this, where it was just they built up leads, and Carlos continually getting dropped back. So I thought that was going to happen again. And we watched Max, and we watched Charles go with him. And then, like you said, man, all of a sudden, Charles has fallen off precipitously off Max. I mean, like, epically. And now, as you said, Checo is back in this thing, and it's almost as though he's got, some of the power-up mushrooms on Mario Kart, and he's just, every couple laps, he's getting 2 seconds closer, 2 seconds closer. And I'm like, this is amazing. And I'm sorry, we hit it quickly. I want to hit it again. Esteban finished 4th. That's a great result. I have a stat on that when we get to the race close. He finished 4th. That's a great result. That is one of the best defensive drives. And I recognize you could say Mercedes didn't have the straight line speed. It's in the wet. You can say whatever you like. But to me, that showed something about Esteban. And I'm not saying he had anything to prove. He really didn't. But just showed, like, epic drive.
I tell you exactly what it shows.
25 minutes holding off one of the greatest ever.
So what really illustrates that for me is we had, And actually, we're going to thread something else back in that you were talking about the homework, Crofty's homework. So at this point here now, we've got the countdown going down. We're pretty much coming into last lap, and they're going mental, going, if Checo can just get past Charles, then with the half points, because it looks like we've just tipped over 27 laps, which puts us into column. I don't know. It's like Ferrari strategy plans. It's put us into column C.
Plan K.
Column C. Question. And it's like, yeah, we're now going to tip it to 50%. So if Checo can get past Charles, then Charles is going to be out of the World Championship contention, but Perez is still going to be in it. Which, by the way, we all know neither of them are in it, because irrespective of what had unfolded, it's just a matter of time before Max wins it. But anyway, It's exciting. And then, so like you say, Hamilton's pressuring Ocon, and he's managed to keep it on the track, because all of that pressure, it must have been so easy in the wet to have just caught a curb or done something you shouldn't need to do. And we're watching Checo's on board, and he's coming into the final chicane, and all of a sudden my eyes are like, where's Leclerc?
Yeah.
Where's he gone? And then it pans back to the outside, and he's there. I'm like, but he wasn't there. How did that happen? And then Charles, I think, takes a little move into Checo and pushes him off at that point, and then holds on to it, right?
Yeah.
And then we get the replay, and Charles completely skips the chicane.
That'd be like at Monza at the end of the start-finish line. You just keep going straight. You go through the polystyrene barriers, and you're in first. You're like, hey, look at me. So, you can't do that.
I'm so tired at this point, and I'm like, well, the race is over. I'm just going to go to bed. Max has won it, and yep, we'll do this all again in Austin, and we'll see if he clinches the title there. And then it's all kicking off. As I'm trying to go to bed, it's like, well, I think there's going to be a penalty for Charles here. There's no way he comes out of that with the same advantage that he had going in.
Is what I'm thinking. He'll be third, but it's not enough for Max to win, right? Because we're only on half points.
We're only on half points, and they come on the team radio. Max, great job. Which, by the way, before we go on to the next part, saying Max, great job, understatement of the millennium. This guy, in a 27-lap race, or whatever it was, I think it's 26 seconds over 27 laps. That's insane. I know Charles's tyres died, but no one else went past Charles. I mean, that is an incredible amount of time to finish ahead. And he's so cool on the radio where he's like, can I come in and do another pit stop? Because he's hungry for the fastest lap point.
What's the fastest lap? Yep.
It's what a win. And then it all comes through, and suddenly there's this... Right, we're going to kick the FIA in the balls quite a lot of this episode, I think. But the one thing I'm not going to do
They deserve it. They deserve it twice over. This is the second time.
But the one I'm not going to do it for is everyone gave them so much abuse last time out for the Perez penalty taking 16,000 years to adjudicate. This one they've looked at instantly and gone,
yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, you've absolutely cut the corner there and gained an advantage. So there you go, 5-second penalty. So everyone's going, oh yeah, when it favours Red Bull, they do the penalty immediately. I'm like, oh, give it a rest. You can't abuse them for taking forever and then criticise them for doing it quickly when it was obvious, right? So the news breaks that Charles is getting the penalty, so he's going to be third. So now
they're standing in front of Johnny Herbert at this point. And we are learning about it, but they don't seem to know it.
And they're like, so everyone's trying to work this out, and Crofty's going into overdrive with his homework. It's like, well, this must mean that then Checo's still in the title hunt, although arbitrarily, but now Charles is officially out. And then it starts whispering through, no, Max, you're the world champion. It's like,
and
what?
At this point, I'm waiting for Crofty to get on and give us one of these.
What has happened?
I didn't, and I'm trying to follow along, and I think I typed, and I think I can use this word, what the hell is going on? Because I didn't know if we were on half points, but the 8-point gap that they needed to open was enough by Charles going to third in a half-point scenario. I didn't know if they'd awarded full points and why they would have done that and why Crofty had done all his homework and studied out of the wrong book. I don't understand what happened. And then it became clear, and well, I should say then, it was abundantly not clear for a while because they went to the cool-down room. Max still wasn't sure he'd won, even though they said he'd won. And they said, you're the world champion. And he said, thanks, it's great to be world champion here. And then they went to the cool-down room, and they go, there's a special room, which, by the way, we'll talk about this another time. But the special world champion room, oh, come on, man. What, with the red throne thing with some leopard skin carpets and what the hell? And so then he goes, well, am I world champion? And the person behind the camera goes, yeah, you're the world champion. He goes, for sure? And then he went into the room. So nobody knew. And then he sits in this ridiculous room on his throne looking at his TV screen. He gets out and says, yeah, I'm alone in there. That's stupid. And he came out. How did the FIA Did they not? Is there not a way they could communicate? Because Sky has all of this, right? Everyone's watching the same feed. They couldn't go, hey, you should tell the people at home that it's going to be full points after we restarted, even though you're telling them something different. And if they're not listening, at least share that with them.
Yeah, I want to know at what point. So this all boils down to when they rewrote the rules, which, by the way, for maximum irony, it's Michael Massey that rewrote this rule, by the way, ladies and gentlemen.
I got a really big ironic point coming in a second.
But anyway, so they rewrite the rules so that we can't have the farce of Spa happening again. But the wording that they used apparently said, I haven't got it in front of me, but it's like a sentence which restates what the rule will be if the race is cut short by a red flag. And because this wasn't cut short, this actually ended correctly. So when they resumed it, while the race length was shorter, the race itself was not ended by a red flag. It therefore doesn't come into the new crofty columns of homework of points thing. It's just full points once you do more than 2 laps. Which, if you want to be completely insane about this and say, imagine a race that had 100 laps, what they're actually saying, the way they have their rules written, just for everyone to get their heads around this, if I start a race normally and I drive 75 laps out of 100 and then it gets red flagged, I will get 75% of my points because you only completed 75% race distance. So I did 75 laps and got 75% points. Flip that same race around the other way where it got delayed and delayed and delayed and delayed, then we could only start and get 2 racing laps. The way the rules are written are, once you've done those 2, you're credible for 100% of the points. What?
Yeah. What? I didn't even know that was that specific.
That's what they've done. They've written the rule to say only when the race is cut short by a red flag, which I think what they meant was, what the spirit of this rule was supposed to be, if the race can't complete 100% distance. So, some bright spark, and maybe the FIA, because everyone's calling them over the moment and giving them a hard time for absolutely everything, I can imagine some intern looking at the rules and going, oh, God.
Well, they showed Jonathan Wheatley on the Red Bull pit lane reading the determination. He's like, oh my God, I think we have a world champion here. Yeah. I mean, like, it was wild to see this unfold. And I hate to say this. It's the second year in a row that we've let, I don't know, bad decisions, weird circumstances, human controversy decide a champion. Now, let me rephrase that. Max was going to win. I mean, like, he was the champion. He deserved it last year. He won it because of any, not all. Right? On the lapped cars, it was any, not all. So he won that. This year, though, he had it. I mean, he one of the greatest champions ever. I got a stat here coming up on how amazing he is. He's going to win it next race. To me, no difference. But the FIA's got to make this so that it's clearer, especially on title deciders.
But the worst thing is, and this again is one of the ironies, is that this time around they've actually followed the rule to the letter of the rule. And I just wonder if some intern has read this rule and gone, so right, how many points are we giving out? Right, let me just double check the rules again. Oh God.
Well, that's what it was. God. Last year it was any. Yeah. You know,
and someone's realised and gone, we can't give 75% for it, or 50%, whatever it is. Why not? Because look at this sentence here, and you can imagine like a powwow of people at the FIA have gone, oh, God, if we're going to be seen as transparent and following the rules, we've got to give 100% points here. And I'd love to think they only realised that moments before it even then trickled through. However, the TV broadcast, as somebody that replied to me on Twitter pointed out, all the way through the race, the points total, every time it kept showing the live update, was giving full points. Right. So if someone did know and had updated like the computer system to say they're going to get full points now because they've done more than 2 laps under a racing condition, it would have been really nice, like you said, that maybe go and talk to the press and the team principals and just give them a tap on the shoulder and say, by the way, guys, we've seen Crofty doing all his homework. Yeah, don't worry about that. It's full points now. And then everybody would have gone, what are you talking about? They would have explained it. And then we could have had the last 10 laps being commentated on, like knowing that Max is about to take the world championship. So
which he's earned with one of the most amazing seasons ever.
This year. So,
yes. Oh, man.
And then I went to sleep.
So last year, Abu Dhabi, lapped cars, it was any, not all. This year, Suzuka, points, it was all, not any. That's my little note for you. Too much drama, but it was 2 things I don't want to overlook. Seb finished 6th and was driver of the day at his favorite track.
Did you see how much he finished 6th by?
0.001.
0.001. Alonso had him. It was there. It was like blink of an eye. I think they measured it. Something like 10 meters, or it was nothing.
Button said it was time if someone's going to gamble. He thought it should be Seb or Fernando. He said Seb, but it was Fernando who gambled. Went to the new set of inters, and it worked.
Yeah.
Not only did he end up finishing where he started, when he took the pit, he almost gained a position and might have been caught by George if he hadn't. So anyway, that was amazing. But we can't end, and I have a note on this, so I'm not going to go into it too much just yet, but Nicky Latifi finished 9th. He was in the points. I didn't want anyone to ignore it. He got 2 points, and I'm going to come back to this in the SAP stats.
Are you
2
okay?
points. I mean, good job, Latifi, right? He took all the right turns. He followed the GPS the whole way around. He did a good job with the Google Maps. But anyway, Rob, anything else you have before we get into some stats about the race?
No, let's go for it. Let's round this one off and hit the SAP stats.
Well, since it was a world champion decider, we're going to go with the original. SAP Stats Suzuka Edition. All right. With Perez following Verstappen home in second, Red Bull took their 5th 1-2 finish of the season. That's the most they've ever had in a single year. I thought that was interesting. Ocon's 4th was Alpine's best result of the year. Lewis's 5th for Mercedes was his worst Suzuka result since he retired in 2013. Here's one that I did not know, and not even close. Today was Hamilton's 306th start, putting him level with Michael Schumacher and Jenson Button for 4th on the all-time list. I didn't know Button had that many starts.
No,
did you?
I would. If you'd have asked me, did Button? That's what that. So Button and Schumacher have the same number of starts.
That's what I found. I mean, maybe I got bad internet information. Seb was 6th. Aston Martin scored back-to-back top 6 finishes. It was Lance 6th last time in Singapore. I had Lance on my fantasy team, hoping he'd repeat that. We'll talk fantasy in a minute. As you just mentioned, Vettel beat the Alpine of Fernando by 0.011. Sorry, 0.011. George finished 8th. It was only the 3rd time he's not finished in the top 5, but it's the 2nd time in a row. Is it the wet? Is it the second half of the year? I made a bad joke about it last time. I won't do it again. With 9th, here back to Gotifi, he has 2 points. Ties him with Nick De Vries with 2 points. But for some reason, Formula One lists Latifi as 20 and De Vries as 21. I don't know if number of starts factors in or anything like that as the tiebreak. But Latifi has crawled back into the top 20. So good job, Nicky.
I bet it's count back to when you got your first points.
What? Ever?
Oh, is that Latifi's first 2 of the year, though? That wouldn't work.
He was on 0,
okay.
so that didn't make sense.
I am tired. Yeah,
That's
you're right. Okay.
And in the Drivers' Championship, which I just referenced, and which Max obviously just won with an amazing season so far, Checo is now 2nd with 253 points, and Charles is 3rd with 252. So 1 point separating 2nd and 3rd. And Christian Horner, when interviewed after the race, said he really wanted to get Checo that 2nd. So it'll be fascinating to see with the last 4 races if they're able to do that. George obviously had a bad day, as referenced, 207 points for 4th place. And Carlos, who obviously didn't score any with his crash on the first lap, is on 202. So again, 4th and 5th, very close in the Drivers' Championship. And last week, for anyone who was listening, and I'm assuming you all were, you heard us talk about the Alpine-McLaren conversation. Alpine is now 13 clear of McLaren for 4th place with 2 good runs today after the DNFs. But it's all about Max. Max's 12th win of the season has put him within 1 of the single season records of nominal number of wins. Well, that's what nominal means. I'm tired too. Schumacher's 2004 season and Vettel's 2013 season, they had 13 wins. So Max has 12. However, a lot of people would say it's a relative amount, and we've actually talked about one of the greatest seasons ever, Alberto Ascari's 1952, where he won 75% of the races. And if you haven't heard our Vale's Tales about it, check it out. But where's Max now? Max has won 12 of 18 races, and by my math, that's 2/3, 66.7%. That would actually tie him with Fangio's 1954 season at 2/3, which is 5th. So he's tied for 5th all time at this point in terms of win percentage in a season. However, there are 4 races left. The Red Bull is amazing. Max is amazing. If he were to win all 4, could he unseat Ascari? And the answer is unfortunately no. He would end up 16 out of 22, which is 72.7%. It would put him in 2nd in terms of best season ever. And that it would be just ahead of Schumacher's 2004 season by 0.5%. So if Max wins out, he will have, statistically speaking, the second greatest season of all time since F1 started. And you know what? I'm not betting against him.
No, absolutely not. He's been absolutely brilliant, and it's well deserved. So, yeah, I think that puts a bow around what was an absolute insane Japanese Grand Prix. But despite the hanging around and nearly falling asleep on my sofa, it was definitely worth it for those 40-odd minutes of racing. So, whew.
Should we hear from Pit Lane Paul?
Let's do it.
Hey dude guys, I'm on the way to the airport. I've missed my flight already, which is always handy. So apologies for the sound quality, I'm just going to have to do this as I can. But look, that's Japan, it was amazing. Literally one of the best on the calendar. The fans are really fun. Everyone's smiley, everyone's wavy, it's just a great place to be. Look, they've got the highest life expectancy in the world as well, so they're expected to reach like 100 years old. It's not unusual here. That gives you a lot about this country. And it's also more impressive because there is like 1,500 earthquakes here a year. So it's unusual not to feel a shake and to be fair, this time of year, typhoon, hurricanes, those sort of things are quite common, which wasn't what we had today, but there was a lot of rain. And Friday there was a lot of rain. It was ridiculously wet. It weren't Singapore wet. There's no like flash flooding, if you know what I mean. So it's just one of those things. Qualifying was interesting. The Max in Lando thing. Look, it was a complete accident. I'm sort of happy there was no punishment dished out because the conditions. I don't know. There's a lot with it. I guess. So that's about where we are with qualifying. Apart from that, it was pretty standard, nothing exciting. Then to race day, listen, we knew the rain was coming. We all knew the rain was coming, and right on cue it started, probably about 2 hours for the race. Not like Singapore level, but enough to be a real big bloody problem. Big decision to start. Do you go on inters? Do you go on wets? What do you do with tyres? Personally, maybe I'd go with wets, but that's a hindsight thing. And it's a gamble, and that's what makes this sort of thing good. You know, yellow flag, safety car, red flag, they're all sort of inevitable at the start of that. So it depends how brave you ever want to be in life. So naturally, there was a red flag. A lot of reasons. Science was a big one, and then the rain was also a big one, and then we had the incident with Gasly and this crane, which is a ridiculous thing to happen. Considering what happened here in 2014, sadly, I was here. I don't really know. There's a lot of investigation needed into that. It's not the fault of Japan. The race director controls when people go on the track, or they should at least control when people go on the track. So there's a lot in that, which I would say is a little bit controversial. But look, that's the way that is. Moving onwards, it was actually a frustrating time then, because we had restart, we didn't have restart, we did have restart, we didn't have restart, and eventually we did restart, and the safety car was there and then came in, I thought, very quickly. It was a bit like, wow, okay. And then, it sort of went ahead. Max and Charles sort of battled. Max pulled away. Leclerc fought and kicked on, but his tyres died. He was in a pretty nervous situation, and pretty much it went from that point onwards to the point where we got to the end of the race. But there's a lot of confusion about the championship. I originally thought Max hadn't won it because it was half points, 3/4 points. It turns out it was completely full points, and Max then won the championship. Aside from that, Japan is one of the greatest places. The fans are brilliant, and you've got to be honest with you, but then people to sit through what they sat through today was world class. From our side, it was them that stole the show. Latifi also, great performance from him. He's under a lot of pressure under the microscope. A few fun facts of Japan, I guess, is the fact they have square watermelons designed to go into fridges. So they actually modified watermelons to go to fridges, which is pretty cool. Strange, but cool. And also they have a festival of the penis, which is also quite cool. where they basically celebrate fertility by celebrating the penis, which is a brilliant Japanese thing. Onwards from there, they have a baby crying competition where sumo wrestlers make babies cry, and hey, I love this place. But listen, as I get to the airport, it's onwards and outwards. We're on the way to Austin. I've got my cowboy hat, I've got my cowboy horse, which is actually a plane, which is going to get me back to the UK, and then from that point onwards, I'm going to have a few days at home before going out to see you guys in the USA. Japan was fun, it was wet, but you know what? It's such an amazing place. Take care all. Bye-bye.
Okay, I mean, that sounds like a very interesting festival. I think I'm just going to focus more on the fact. I'm just going to focus more on the fact of Paul with his cowboy hat on instead. But it's looking forward to seeing some pictures of him wearing said cowboy hat in Austin. So look forward to that one. Do you want to hit off fantasy before we close this week out?
Happy to. So last week, Singapore did an update quickly. Apparently, the computers got waterlogged. So I wanted to hit last week because a lot of people did great. So Mom is number one. Danielle P. first place last week at Singapore GP. Congrats, Danielle. Can you hear the drums for Lando? Joseph W. in second. Red Bolino, Balotelli 21, third. A gentleman named Sap was fourth. James B. with JLAB was fifth. Jeff K., who I think is my friend who knows nothing about Formula One and said his team the first week, finished sixth. That's because he had McLaren in there, like double McLaren, maybe even triple. And so it's been horrible the whole year, but it worked for him in Singapore with their fourth and fifth. Kerry H. and Peter G. with Team 1 and Scuderia Gates, respectively, in seventh. And Jim M., your neighbor, Guitar Hero, ninth. Great job, Jim. And 10th last week was Andrew T. Alfatale, who is one of the leaders of the entire world, is putting a worldie out there. So, Andrew, great job. And then for Japan, some guy named Sap used his Mega Drive this week on Max, and it turned out he won. So I was first, 296. Balotelli 21, Red Bolino 276, Renato L. Flying Hakkinen, great job Renato, tied for second with Red Bolino at 276. And then we have Cruz R, Cruise Seat fourth, Danielle P. again, Mom is number one, yes she is, fifth, Vanch J. Team 1 sixth, Brian C. Stallion seventh, Andrew T. already referenced, Alpha Taylor eighth, Mark D. a 100 seconds of DRS guest, DLV ninth, and yet again 10th place. Jim M., Guitar Hero. Nice work, Jim. So I just want to give a shout out to everybody. It feels as though the last couple weeks have been really good opportunities for things to pick up in fantasy. Using my Mega Drive early, I know that. I know I will be caught, but it did kind of shoot me up to 226th globally. So I'm excited about that. I know I'll tail off because of other people using theirs. But it worked out well for me, and it obviously gave me 2 more weeks beating Rob. I'm not going to mention the Rob Bryan stats because it's embarrassing for you, so I'm not going to sing the song today. Maybe I'll hold that for next week.
You can sing it if you want. After the debacle of them deciding they were going to just randomly change the values of all the drivers, and I kind of gave up. It's actually, no, I mean, kudos to you.
Point.
You pay more attention to this, and you're better at it than me. It's just they need to get in the same way the FIA. It's like the fantasy mirrors reality, right? So in the same way the FIA has got a whole bunch they need to sort their shop out.
True.
They've got to give this game to somebody that can. It could be such a good game. But then the moment, like, you can see some of the teams that have got this ridiculous budget because they just gamed it while the bots were dumping and pumping, it's like, oh, why'd you have to spoil our game? It was so good at the beginning.
Well, and then what they're doing now makes sense. Like
it does. They should have done this in the beginning, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's too late, and it's too aggressive. But
they also did it unannounced. So you're sitting there thinking, what am I going to do this week? Then all of a sudden you watch like half your drivers have lost. Like, and over the past, it would take it felt like 4 weeks would go by and you might get a 0.1 million of a change. And all of a sudden you logged on one day and it's like, okay, they've just tanked by 1.9 million or something stupid. It's like, what the hell's going on? So yeah,
Agreed.
It just kind of, yeah.
I have a mea culpa. This week was kind of crazy with work, and I started to figure out a 100 seconds of DRS guest because I put a poll out on Twitter and some people responded and I never followed up. So again, if you're interested in participating, let us know. I will get on that early this week and make sure we have a chance to have some fun conversations with a listener for next week.
Yeah, that would be cool. And I just really need to go to bed now, I think, and then we can try and work out what the heck we're doing next week, because we've got an off week before Austin, right? So
Sounds good.
Let's try and come up with some kind of content between now and then, Brian. You got anything else to add?
No, I thought it was chaotic. Fun. On-track racing was fun. The FIA hosed it up twice. Congrats to Max.
Oh, 100% congrats to Max. Congrats to Max.
Easy for you to say.
He finishes top of the leaderboard, which, by the way, is where Arsenal are today as well, top of the leaderboard. But anyway, let's keep it on the dirty side, and we will have a banger of a show for you next week, even though we don't know what it's going to be yet. But take it easy.
Be well, everyone. Bye.